Helen Welsh. Helen is someone that I've met through the work that we've been doing with virtual reality in education. She is a virtual reality producer at the Maudsley Learning Centre at the Maudsley NHS Foundation Trust. She is previously worked as a nurse and then later in the television industry for 10 years, and now she's combining both of these roles in creating content for NHS and other global companies. Over recent years, she's worked with the Tackling Inequalities and Discrimination Experiences in the Health Service, also known as TIDES, at King's College London, and is really researching to improve our knowledge and understanding of inequalities in health and the health service. The project includes creating virtual reality, 360-degree video content, and the development of other VR champions around using virtual reality in education. So I'm really, really excited to welcome Helen, as this is something very close to our heart within the education faculty here at Moorfield. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Hello. Thank you for that lovely introduction. I'm sure you all also have loads of questions about how I got from nursing into TV. It's a natural transition, really. I'm going to start by talking about how we started creating 360 content at the Maudsley. We started with a very simple £20 camera and an very old-fashioned headset which came in a cardboard box that you'd stick your mobile phone into. So we had very, very little investment, but we thought, what can we do? How much content can we make? And we just tried to figure it out ourselves. And we made quite a few different types of content: eating disorders, de-escalation content, suicide prevention content, and learn a lot of lessons along the way with it, where to place the camera, making sure that you use the whole room, sort of taking a lot of inspiration from simulation, basically. And our faculty that we work alongside at the Maudsley really helped us to sort of build these scenarios that they had in simulation scenarios into more immersive 360 experiences. And then we were very lucky to sort of gain some further investment, and we upgraded to an 8K camera and some very good Pico camera headsets, which have been able to sort of enhance our learning and development of this content even more, because we can use eye tracking, which is really important, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. And we partner with a company called Verti, which I like to refer to as the YouTube of virtual reality, where you can have all your content on, and then ideally what I like to do is then share it with other organisations so that we can all learn together, because the NHS is chronically underfunded, as we all know, so hopefully we can share lots of content and create lots of content together to make education as best as possible for everyone and available for everyone. And how I see virtual reality and what I talk about it is, as a producer for TV, you see, as a viewer, what I want you to see. You don't see what you want to see, but with 360 video, we see what we choose to see ourselves. So there's no producing, really, and that mimics real life. And when it comes to discrimination, you can use this really to sort of challenge sort of your own bias, your own perspective on situations, which has been incredibly valuable, and we've learned a lot from it. So we like to place the camera right in the centre of the action, so that people tend to feel a little bit more uncomfortable, because in real life you can take a step back, but in virtual reality you can't do that in these 360 videos, and you're sort of left with that uncomfortable feeling. I'm sure we've all seen situations where we wish we'd sort of stood up and said something and said, since I saw that and I should have said something. You have to sit with that uncomfortable feeling in the virtual reality. And when it comes to discrimination content, that powerful feeling sort of enacts, hopefully, that bystander effect, where maybe we can learn from it and what we can do to better support our colleagues when things like this happen, whether that's bullying or any form of discrimination. And we also like to create ambisonic sound. So basically, when you move your head in the headset, if you were all looking at me, I'd sound like I was speaking directly at you, but if you turn your head, my voice is like this. So it's really powerful because it makes you feel like You can hear footsteps, so you'll turn and you listen to them, and it feels like you're in the room with people, which sort of helps. And those are the sort of the equipment that we've invested in. And I've spent a lot of time sort of teaching myself how to use it. And I'm sure it sounds very overwhelming, but I truly believe if I can do it as a nurse and teach myself, genuinely anybody can, because we have to start somewhere. So we started with the phase 1 of our race and equality training, where we'd created this content and I wanted to sort of disseminate it to people. And it's all well and good that my hospital has a me, but no one else in the NHS has a virtual reality producer, so they're very lucky to have a me. So how can I teach and how can our faculty teach people to deliver this training in situ, so they don't have to come to me, so that you guys can deliver the training and go away and deliver it yourselves. We had this virtual reality training and I was like, let's proof of concept it in South London and Maudsley, see if we can get it to work, and then maybe trial it at other hospitals. And this is a little bit more about the Tides team. I implore you to reach out to them if you are interested in race and equality work. You can find them at thetidestudy.com. This is Professor Stephanie Hatch. They got funding and they're continuing to be funded to create anti-discrimination work. And the work that we'll look at today is from the Tides content in the Walking in the Shoes phase 2. Sorry, Oakley might like to be involved in this. And we're going to particularly look at the data from Tunde's story. And what debrief model we used for this was the talk debrief model. And what we did was just adapted it slightly by having a description phase at the start, because the description phase for virtual reality is really important. The thing about this is that it can be run in the talk debrief model is very flexible. You can do it in a 5-minute situation, or you can do it in an hour-long situation. So it's really flexible for clinical staff delivering the training live on wards, in A&E, or in the community. Everyone's situation is very different, so champions have the opportunity to make it flexible for their staff. And we encourage that as part of the training. So what you'll see with this content is that there is eye tracking dots, and that's what we use to sort of help support with the debrief. So all of these dots sort of showcase where people were looking in the scenario. So when you look, you don't see that, but in the back end of the content, when we look back at it, or as a champion you look back on it, you can see where people were looking in the scenario. And the bigger the hotspot, I guess, the more people were looking in that area. So what might happen now is this will just potentially loop, and what you'll see is this is the Tunde story content. Most people are looking towards where Tunde is, and then you'll see a shift. And what happens in this is that Elizabeth walks across the screen, and then she will hit the wall. And people have heard it, but not everyone saw it, so their eyes will have shifted to see that, but they missed it. And then what was very interesting in this was the data that came up afterwards. So 95% of our users didn't see the female staff member hitting the wall, but 3 in 8 of the users, unprompted, highlighted that the black male's behaviour in this video was aggressive. What was interesting is that he was talking with his hands, which culturally can be seen as is a way of expressing yourself. I like to talk with my hands mostly because of anxiety and nerves. But for Tunde and people from ethnic minorities, that often is described as aggressive behaviour, incorrectly usually. And when in the debrief, when people were asked if there's anything you'd consider, or anyone you'd consider to be at fault, over 59% answered Tunde, which again was particularly very interesting and incredibly disappointing. On a second viewing, so after the situation was debriefed, 100% of users witnessed the slap on the wall, and they sort of their opinions of that situation changed. Similar to real life, when you take in that 360 view, not everyone is going to see everything, but it's okay to not see everything. It's not okay to not sort of reflect, I guess, is the point here. So 100% of users noticed that the white male's tone was the most confrontational, and the white female's action were the most aggressive after the second viewing. But what was interesting is sort of all of the topics that were discussed in 2.5 minute video. The videos aren't very long, we try and keep them pretty short because people don't have a lot of time to be spending in VR headsets. They also can be motion sick or nervous about it. And race inequality was the big topic. Day and night staff and the difference between sort of equality in access to PPE was on quite up there. Microaggressions, unconscious bias, plenty of things from a 2.5 minute video. A lot of this we wouldn't have even predicted in creating the content, that it would have been so rich and full of topics for discussion. And this is what our learners said. I'm not going to go through them all, but I think the most powerful one for me, and the one that always sticks with me, is the one in the bottom corner over there, where it talks about how Tunde's story could have been their own. I wasn't surprised by what my group said, but it was the first time that I've been able to have an open conversation at work about racism before, which is incredibly disappointing that people feel like they can't talk about things that happen in the workplace, but also really refreshing and a credit to the champions that they've been able to create a psychologically safe place where people felt that they could talk about inequalities in the workplace. It's hard enough to talk about things with your friends often, let alone talking with your colleagues or people that maybe you don't get on well with. So it was really, really powerful to hear, and like hearing that people felt like they were helpless, that they couldn't take a step back. It's that uncomfortable feeling that you're left with in your stomach. This is sort of our increase in or appetite for the VR. We started with not very high numbers, if I'm honest. We had about 15 people take part. The second bar is the number of those 15 people that came back that same month to take part voluntarily. They didn't have to, this wasn't mandatory training. And basically on word of mouth from the champions, people were having waiting lists to take part in this training in South London and Maudsley, and this grew up until I think the final month 5, we had like 111 people taking part, and like 96 people came back to take part in training across 7 champions, I think it was, 6 champions, so hardly any. We exceeded our target. We were trying to train, I think, 10 people per champion. Ideally, we would love to have hit 100. We managed to smash that. And then with phase 2, we took everything that we learned in phase 2 and we applied that to de-escalation content. De-escalation content particularly, that we were really passionate, wanted to make sure that that also embedded naturally race inequality, because very sadly that comes hand in hand. And we also wanted to take that as a pilot so that other trusts, like I know now that this works in South London and Maudsley, but I'm still available at South London and Maudsley. Can it work in Scotland? Can it work in Wales? Can it work in Leeds? And we recruited champions again. We put a call out for champions. People got in touch, and then we built out a champions network of 20 champions. And we doubled our goal of trying to, I think we wanted to achieve 200 people trained. I think we ended up training over 400 people. The champions were from all different backgrounds, so you don't have to be clinical. You could be an administrative staff, you can be from a clinical background, you can be from any part of the hospital, as long as you had the support of your line manager. That was the main goal to be part of it. And we had to make adaptations to local policy. So we understand that at South London and Maudsley, or in London, there's different police protocols when it comes to de-escalation strategies, but in other hospitals it's very different. In Scotland it's very different. So we had to make adjustments, and we made like an e-learning package so that the champions could sort of reflect on this and use that continuously rather than relying on me. So I wanted to remove the need for me, basically. They still had me if they needed me, but thankfully they lent on their e-learning. This time we made 8 videos. We had sort of a Love Actually approach where 3 patients' journeys would intersect across these 8 videos. So you can watch them all on their own. You can also watch them out of sequence. But what is best, I guess, is that similar to real life patient stories, can start in A&E and they can travel through all different hospital parts of the hospital, all different parts of the trust, from the community all the way through. And I guess what was super useful was that they got to follow these stories and see how like the effect of their colleagues had, or how different patients can affect different patients' journeys, and sort of, a bit like Love Actually or Sliding Doors for those who are not Love Actually fans. I think it also makes it super immersive, and these are the things that we increase. EDI is super important in everything that we do when it comes to training content, and it has to be embedded like organically. It's not supposed to be just a tick box exercise. It needs to be something that is thought through all the way through the process, and we're taking in patient stories, staff stories, and we're making that useful rather than just not there to just tick a box and go through the motions with it. And again, enhancing that psychologically safe space. So I guess what is next? So like I said, Tides are working to create the next stage of their content. They'll be creating brand new race and equality content over the next 6 years, and hopefully that's something that we can utilise more fields to help and be involved from the get-go, which would be incredible. But also we're looking to sort of look deeper into the data analysis for the eye tracking data. Perhaps we can even break that down even further when it comes to like our nurses looking at nurses in those scenarios, or doctors looking at doctors, or anaesthetists looking at anaesthetists. And similar with gender, it's really interesting to sort of break that data down and then further look at it from a debrief standpoint and sort of create that safe debriefing space. I think a lot of the work can go in the headset, but I like to keep the headset time, like I said, really short. It's sort of what's next is the secondary learning that you get together with your team, and then you can affect real change together. So hopefully that's been useful. That's the end. Thank
you. Do you have any questions for Helen?
Thank you, that was really fascinating. What I'd like to ask is whether you have any evidence as yet as to whether this training makes any difference to people's real life behaviour, and what do you think you can do with people who don't see that there's a problem, don't understand their natural biases?
I think that it would be naive of me to say that we will always be able to convince everybody that there's a problem with racism or discrimination. I think that some people you'll never be able to change the mind of, which is very sad. My hope is that one day maybe together we can live in a world where that doesn't happen, but it would be incredibly naive of me to say that today in front of you. What I can say is our original 6 champions, they were able to, because obviously they were in my trust, they were affecting real change like live, so they were having these conversations with their colleagues, and some of them changed SLAM policy because of what they were discussing in sort of live in the room, essentially with one another. So there was one of the videos that we have from the Tides team is around a conversation of, is this like staff are having this conversation on the ward, is there not a safe space for staff to go and have this conversation, or is there not somewhere that staff can have a conversation like this? Where is the reporting to for conversations that this, like their staff are having this at the nurses station? Maybe it's not the best place to have like an open conversation about that. It's important to still have that conversation, but why is the signposting not working? Why is there not a better system where staff know where they can deal with these situations? So that happened. Our next stage is to look at, like, I guess, through internal anti-discriminatory questionnaires and things to see, like, okay, is the training that we've had in the certain areas of the hospital, are those wards, are those community teams experiencing less racism? So currently I don't have that data, but that is definitely on our, like, agenda to look at, because that is super important. I don't want to just lip service it. And then again, with the Tides content, they're looking at on a more national level. So we'll take in, okay, if we implement this training in Moorfields, for example, are we able to bring down the racism or the discrimination that's happening in this area? And then we compare that to another place that hasn't received this training, or we can even like do it like, okay, we have this ward or this area of the hospital that's receiving the training, is it bringing down the area? So that's our like next step, basically, is to dig deeper into it. We're seeing good responses from staff, we're seeing people being able to begin to have that conversation where they're at least acknowledging some bias in their own behaviours, which I think is the first step into anything. It's not going to happen overnight, but even to be able to have that first step, I think means a lot to people who are having to live with this every single day, very sadly.
No more questions? I've got one question actually.
Okay.
My question is, if you were us here at Moorfields, wanted to implement virtual reality in our education and training packages, what advice can you give us to get this really off the ground in a meaningful way?
Of course. So step one will be to, I guess, you need to find your people who have the passion for VR within your organisation. There will be people here today probably who would be super excited to start something with virtual reality. And then look at the areas in which, so if you have a problem with race inequality, for example, look at some specific areas within your trust or that you can like start with. You can't tackle everything in a day, but you can start somewhere. So utilise the people that have the passion for it, and then bring in like with the Tides team, what they did was they interviewed staff. So all of the stories, Tunde's story, they come from real experiences, very sadly, real experiences that have happened to staff in hospitals across London. And then bring that in and have it as like, you can utilise your own staff who write simulation scenarios. You can utilise people like myself or other people in other organisations that maybe have like the producing side, but equally you probably have some people at your hospital who are super passionate about filmmaking, maybe in their spare time, and then you bring them in. You always, like within your own community, you'll find people, and then start there. Write the scenarios. Write your like your first plan. I know that you have already got a lot of headsets at Moorfield, so it's about utilising them. And then it's the same with the champions. Finding those people in your organisation who can be sort of the first people to be your champions and deliver it in their teams. There's nobody who knows your own team better than you. There's no point in me coming in and trying to deliver that training, because I don't know what your team dynamic is, but you do in your team. You will know your team dynamic. So find those people in the different areas and then build it from there, because the excitement for the training, VR will always, or like new technology will always be super exciting, but it's that first step once people have got in the headsets and they're not having to live in the headsets for half an hour, because that's a complete waste of time in my opinion. As a VR producer, I say that. But once you take that first step and people get that interest, they will want to come back, because we're seeing that from people who are like nurses who have been in our trust for many years, to doctors who've never put on a headset before, but also from the junior staff who are just coming in, or newly qualified staff, and bringing everybody together in that space to do it together. I think it's that, like, starting with the appetite that you have in your hospital and building on that appetite, because I think passion breeds more passion within your organisation. And if you don't have some people that are willing to sort of like build that start, then you can't push the boulder down the hill. Once the boulder's moving, other people will come. They will. Like, that's what we're seeing. Like, even bringing me here today, the boulder's moving for you guys. So, thank you.